Hello, I'm Janine Nodder, and this week on Chatting with Janine, we're talking about pursuing patents, and my guest is an inventor named Richard Kahn. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you, Janine.
So I've known you for a number of years, but I didn't know that you were an inventor.
Well, I've been creating things for many years. The first attempt at getting a patent was in the mid-90s, and it all started with seeing a need and creating something that would solve that problem. I was granted my first patent in 2016. The filing took place in 2014, and I decided to, basically, I created a portable powered sifter, patent number 9,358,583.
That was the number I saw in the message from you, and I thought you had I was thinking you had that many patents.
I wish, but no. That was the number, and would I memorize all of them if I had 1,000 patents? Probably not. But that invention was for a portable powered soil sifter that was combining two tasks on a particular landscaping job. This one particular customer, I was edging the flower beds, getting them ready.
Oh, and you are a landscaper, so that's handy.
Getting them ready for fresh bark mulch, but this customer also had a sinkhole in the backyard that needed filling. Well, as I was edging the flower beds, I noticed chunks of turf with good loam on the bottom were being pulled up as well. So, boy, it would be great if I could combine these two jobs. And if I could separate the loam from the chaff, I could fill the sinkhole with the chaff, then cover it up with the loam and plant grass there. And so I went home that day, and I tend to accumulate things. I'm a scavenger, but I also have uses in mind for them. And I made the original prototype for this sifter out of things I had lying around, including the electric motor.
So you're like a McGyver. You can make something.
Funny you should mention that. One of my favorite shows. I'm on the third binge watching of the original McGyver series.
My uncle was like a McGyver too. He could make something out of anything.
Well, now you're on the right track. So I always wondered, why don't more people pursue patents? And the first reason that they don't, I have a list here. The first reason is insecurity. They start second-guessing themselves. Oh, somebody probably already invented it. Oh, I couldn't come up with anything creative. So the insecurity, they second-guess themselves out of even pursuing it. The second reason is probably the money. For my particular utility patent, from the initial professional patent search to the final filing of fees with the USPTO.
What is USPTO?
U.S. Patent and Trademark Office.
Okay.
Was just north of $6,000. That's for a simple utility patent.
That hurts.
There's not like drug research or anything like that. This is a simple utility patent. And that then feeds the insecurity. Do you believe in your creative idea enough to be willing to fork over that kind of money, which is probably more now than it was back then.
Wow.
And so money, insecurity, and naivete is the third one. The story that I tell is a former boss of mine when I used to work at Lowe's. He said he should have been the inventor of cooler chests with wheels on them. Okay, Paul, tell me, why do you think that? Well, he was 19 years old, young child. So what does he do? He calls the cooler manufacturers and says, do you think this would be a good idea? Big mistake.
Yes, because yes, it is, and they took it, right?
Well, or just the opposite. They say, no, it isn't. and then they'll go do their thing and patent it. And that's unfortunately the naivete part.
That probably happens a lot.
I would say.
For example, my sons and I said, "Oh, shut the front door." And you know what? After I said that, I hear that all the time. I'm like,
who said that all the time?
I hear it all the time. I hear it on
your kids
shows. Yeah.
Repeat the things that you told them as they were growing
up. No, but
up.
I hear it like on TV, radio, and here I thought I made it up, but maybe I heard it and it just filed away in my brain and just came to the surface. I said, shut
there are
the front
things
door.
Attributed to other things, and there's sayings that my mom told me that not related to creativity and patents. Like she said, if you always tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said.
Exactly. Smart mom.
And she didn't invent that, but I remember it first from her. So knowing, go ahead.
We're at number 4.
Number 4, MVP. That means minimally viable product. Over-analysis. I am a big one for that.
Repeat that, please, because I'm still thinking of most valuable player, but you said
that is minimally viable product. I'm an engineer background at least, and I'm always analyzing, overanalyzing, reanalyzing. So as I'm building this prototype, I say to myself, gee, I should modify the sifter to do this, or in addition to all these other things. And then I say, well, I should also do such and such. And finally, I don't get anything done. I overanalyze it. So finally, I had to switch gears to what is the minimally viable product? It's not that I forget all these other things. One small thing was my original prototype has fixed legs. Now I made them so they fold. And they can be held in either position with strong magnets. It's light enough that an average person can pick it up, hang it on the wall so it doesn't take up any floor space, and the legs will stay in whichever position you leave them in thanks to these magnets. But the original prototype was just bolted to the frame. And the shifting grid was also bolted to the frame. Now it has interchangeable shifting grids with no tools. But I had in my brain had to come up with something that said, I can sell this and save all this other stuff for version 2.0.
Okay.
And
thinking ahead.
Well, thinking ahead. And the problem is, you've probably heard the expression paralysis by analysis.
I have now.
Well, people who are geeky like myself, it took me a long time to get comfortable with that self-description, will think about 50 million ways to do things as they're doing a thing. Okay? Minimally viable product. Being willing to say, I have enough materials here to build it, to test to see whether it actually works. I've also found out, by the way, that you don't need to have a working prototype before you can get a patent. You have a concept.
Oh, that's interesting. You don't have to have a working product, just a concept.
There was this woman on TV. Her name is Elizabeth Holmes. She came up with the idea of a blood analysis machine that would perform a series of tests that on minute amounts of blood that previously could not be determined. And she's got hundreds of patents to her name, but a lot of them never actually worked, or she never developed a working prototype. It's on TV, it's public knowledge, but instinctively, I always wanted to see if my idea worked, and I would build prototypes. Number 5 would be bad attitude. And when I made the joke before the show about I should have been the inventor of Velcro,
yes,
it wasn't just a joke. It was actually true. My mom told me, you take those burrs off your clothes before you come in the house, instead of saying, gee, Mom, I'd love to, but I don't want to take my pants off outside the house. And I can borrow Dad's microscope and see what's making these burrs stick to the jeans. This was when I was 8 years old, 1966. And I should have come up with it, but I didn't have the attitude then that I have now. So having a bad attitude, it also kind of feeds with the insecurity piece. Other things are, I just wanted to make something for myself. All right? Some people building something that could be patentable, but they just want to make their work easier and they're not thinking of marketing it. And the last thing is you might work for a company that has a patent assignment agreement. And that's a very real legal concern that you need to make sure if you invent something, you don't have to give it all away to your employer. Well, when I was still working in the computer field, and I'll make this relevant too, I worked in Boston for this company in the Schraft building, right in Charlestown, right off Sullivan Square. And walking from the parking lot to the building, there's 2 buildings that I had to go between. Became like a wind tunnel, even with a light breeze. And there'd be all these umbrellas that were turned inside out, stuffed in the trash barrel. And I said,
That's what almost happened to mine today.
well, what happened is I need to come up with, that was my first serious attempt at getting something patented. First thing I did was I went to the VP of operations saying, I have this idea for a new kind of umbrella. I don't want to infringe upon the patent or whatever my patent assignment clause. So he brought out the thing that I originally signed when I started working there and said, all right, it only applies reasonably related to the business of Orion. Orion Research was the company. And since this umbrella has nothing to do with anything we're doing, knock yourself out. All right? Then that was the green light. Then the next thing I did was I went to one of the original employees of the company, a Dr. Martin Frant, and I said, who does this company use for its intellectual property law? I knew you needed to get a good lawyer who knows his or her stuff. And he said they were expensive, but they'll be thorough and fair. I paid, back then, this is mid-90s, $600 for the patent search on this idea. Now, mind you, I had already built a working prototype. I did. First thing I did was I'd see, does it already exist in the market for a wind-resistant umbrella? It did not. Search engines weren't quite as refined as they used to be. And so I did what I could to find out it didn't exist. I had the lawyer do a professional patent search for $600, and they came back with this stack of potentially infringing patents.
What do you mean? Like more than one person?
Other people, there were patents going back to the 1800s for wind-resistant umbrellas.
Oh, that's interesting.
But there was
so how do they decide who gets the patent? If a whole bunch of people... It's like at the State House when we have more than one rep put in a bill for the same thing. It's like whoever's first. Or if, like when I was in the minority, they killed my bill. Then they wouldn't let my bill go forward.
Well, I have some ideas of that too, but we're not going to get into
we're
politics.
not getting into that. We're not getting into that.
So what I did was, first thing I did was I took some of those trashed umbrellas because I knew I could use the materials. Here's the McGyver thing. Then I bought a brand new umbrella, which I was going to cannibalize to make the working prototype. And I found that a regular umbrella would turn inside out at about 5 miles an hour. Okay, I had my wife drive the car. I was on the passenger side hanging out the window, holding the umbrella against the wind.
That's actually cool. Story.
Testing the prototype.
Yeah.
Well, and about 5 miles an hour, a regular umbrella would turn inside out. Then I took...
Now you know.
Then I took the new umbrella, I cut holes in it, took some of the material from the trashed umbrellas, and, I cut basically out of each pie section, if you will, fastened it at the top, at the apex, and with rubber bands I attached the other ends, made triangles for each rib section. And so what would happen is, at least in my brain before I tested it, if the wind gust came up underneath, the flaps would open, let the air vent out. But when the rain came down, the flaps would close and prevent you from getting wet.
That's interesting.
And we tested that with my wife driving again. And I held the prototype, and it didn't turn inside out till about 25 miles an hour of driving. 20,
Wow.
25, somewhere in that range.
That's a big jump.
So
And what's your wife's name?
Sherry.
Sherry
Like
should
the,
have a shout
like
out.
the wine.
Like what?
Like the wine, like the drink.
Oh, okay.
And she was helping me test the original prototype. And again, we found out that that wasn't really patentable, but how come none of these people have brought it to market? Less than a year after I got my patent search results, Brookstone, that company that does hard to find things, interesting things that aren't available to a broader market like at big box stores or department stores, they had one. And I don't know.
Someone saw you hanging out the window with that umbrella.
They might have. Who knows? But less than a year later, I bought it and I lost it. But the point is, why wasn't it brought to market back that many years ago? And there's people that create things, and one thing I'm fascinated about is a lot of people don't give women credibility as inventors, and people don't realize that the automotive windshield wiper, it's raining today, the automotive windshield wiper was invented by a woman who was stuck in New York City traffic, get this, 1902.
Whoa.
That's 122 years ago. 1902. And New York City traffic in 1902. Okay, so you can imagine, and she was from Alabama too, okay? So people are creative. It has nothing to do with men or women. And that brings up the other story about creativity. My older granddaughter, she's now 9, but ever since she was like 4 years old, she would spend the night, like one night a week with me and Sherry. And that in the night, we would make banana nut bread together. In the morning, we'd make waffles, and she'd help that.
I do that with my little granddaughter. She just turned 3.
Perfect. And they start. Well, she'd always want to be where Grandpa was, even when tinkering in the garage. And there's many ways for a young child to get hurt in my garage. So I said, okay, Grandpa, can I help? Okay, here's a block of wood. Lots of random wood. Here's screws. Put these screws in that block of wood. You're going to have to know which kind of screwdriver, slotted, Phillips head, star drive, which is sometimes called Torx. And she would now put it, and then as she's doing this, putting the different screws in, she says, hey, I'm putting this screw in this high, this one this high, I'm making steps.
Oh, cute.
She discovered that. Okay. Similarly, waffle morning, where I'm ladling the batter into the waffle iron, and she just off the cuff says, hey, Grandpa, I wonder what would happen if we put the waffle batter, and she held up these muffin tins, 6 spaces for muffin tins. So I grabbed the spray lubricant and and sprayed a little bit in each muffin place, started ladling the batter into she looks at me and says, I didn't mean right now.
Well, how'd they turn out?
Great. But
so waffle mix put in the muffin
tins,
and it works, huh?
It worked. And I gotta tell her, I'm not making fun of you. You don't realize how profound this is. Can't really call it an invention, but you had a creative thought. You had a creative thought. You came up with this idea, and now I do it routinely, not just for waffles, but the banana nut bread mixture.
I think I want to try that. What is your granddaughter's name?
Maggie.
Good job, Maggie.
Well, Margaret and Madeline we call Maggie and Maddie. Sometimes one comes out as the other.
I have a Paul and Patrick next to each other, and I'm always getting their names confused.
Well, but Maggie and Maddie sound so much alike, but getting them to hold on to that. And I said, now Maggie, if the issue comes up again, I say it in such a way that I'm not making fun of you. This is profound creativity. We did this for your daddy, our son, and you need to be thinking creatively.
Do you call them waffle muffins?
We never named them, but that could be another thing. See, this is all part of the creativity. A lot of times, like when I'm talking about overanalysis, I don't see the forest for the trees. Somebody might come up with a creative name for something, totally random, and I say, I wished I had thought of that.
So we have about 7 minutes left, and you have some items with you.
Right.
So
thank you for bringing that up. Okay, 2 items. This is where the creativity comes in and maintaining a good attitude. I make clocks out of things, and it all started with somebody making fun of me. Okay, now if I had a bad attitude, I would have gotten offended and not be thinking creatively.
I'm in politics. I have people make fun of me every
Right.
day.
Maybe one's related to the other, but but being able to maintain a positive, you got to have a thick skin in politics.
Oh, yeah.
But I was bringing in a tool at a local repair shop to have it repaired. The owner of the shop was testing a chainsaw he just fixed by cutting wafers off a birch log about this big in diameter. The first thing I noticed, again, engineering brain, it was almost perfectly round. And he was cutting very even wafers out of them. I said, hey, John, what do you use those wafers for? Oh, I got a guy comes in and makes clocks out of them. I said, okay, that makes sense. So I go in, drop my tool off to have it fixed. On the way back, he says, actually, Rich, I was just kidding about the clocks. But my brain is working on it. So I took a couple of those wafers he cut. And I sanded it down on both sides, polyurethaned it, put my business card there, polyurethaned it some more, went to Michael's craft store and got a clock making kit, put it in there, and then I brought it in to show John, who was the owner's name. I said, what do you think? And he said, not bad. I said, I will give it to you if you put it where customers can see it. And he did, and it had been there for many years. The business isn't there anymore, but that was one thing. And so I make clocks out of things, and I try to get most unusual that I can. This is probably one of the most unusual. It used to be a bathroom scale. Okay. So I'll hold it up for the viewing audience.
So the time changes.
Well,
the weight changes with the time.
Usually when I make clocks out of things, I make them, and the clock mechanism is designed to move the hands in a, clockwise direction. Well, I wanted to use as much of the original scale as possible. So the paper dial that usually used to register the weight is attached to the clock making.
So it's 230 o'clock.
So, there's numbers below it, okay?
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so I put the numbers below it, but the dial runs in reverse because this line here that used to read the weight off the dial is now reading the time, but the hands, it's moving this way. So basically the clock is running backwards. 1 is here, 2 is here, 3 is there, and so on. So
there you go.
You have a clock that runs backwards but keeps perfectly good time.
But is it to scale?
No, it doesn't read weight too. I had to take some of the springs and the mechanism out to do that, but I saved the springs.
Okay. You can make something else with the
and that's
springs.
thing number 1.
Thing number 1. I love it. And it matches your shirt.
Yes, it does. Funny you should mention that too. Now, this is the other thing. This is a personal cooler.
It doesn't have wheels.
No.
And
No. Yeah.
got
I don't know what that
on
is.
there.
But spider web. Oh no, that's I know what that is. That's some dried glue. Sorry
That's
about
what
that.
I thought. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I had to glue something this week.
My wife every other month gets certain medicine delivered in refrigerated containers, and I'm thinking she needs the medicine. what an unusual and environmentally unfriendly way to do things, but that's how they have to do it. So I had to come up with a way to reuse the cooler. Everything in here is totally repurposed. Of course, there's the styrofoam. These red things here come from battery terminal protectors. You know, some car batteries have side mount terminals, some have top mount terminals. These come from the terminal protectors of side mount terminals. The piece that's in between is the register tape. I work a part-time job at an auto parts store. The register tape, thermal paper, I cut them in half, put them in there to reinforce the inside here, and now it's a cooler. Ordinary wire coat hanger. I save crutches because the adjustment mechanism and various pieces of it can be used for different things. And this is nice lightweight aluminum. Everything in here is repurposed. Now, to give you an idea how well insulated it is I took these ice packs frozen last night, put them in here at 4:30 p.m. roughly. You can feel the ice packs. They are still pretty well frozen solid.
Yes, he's telling the truth. Wow.
And
I was looking to see if you had we're going to crack open a beer or something, but we can't do that on air.
See,
Go to
creative
Able
thought.
Ebenezer down the road.
Well, I made this. I can crank one of these out in about 15 minutes. Totally repurposed materials.
It says remove for side terminal
Yeah, basically
connection.
these are terminal protectors for car batteries. When they're being shipped, they bang into each other. They don't damage the terminal. You can keep this. I can make these virtually no cost for materials, and
Do you want your ice packs back too?
you can have that as well. That's up to you. If you can't use it, give it to somebody else. One thing I want to do before the time runs out is I want to give a shout out to my hometown Hudson Cable group. They've helped me make how-to videos on, Jim McIntosh, Mike Johnson. They helped me make a how-to video on how to make these. So I have videos on how to make this. I have videos on how to make a automatic plant watering system for next to nothing as well.
Awesome. And I can shout out to the Hudson crew too, because I know them. I've been down there. One of them came here to watch the taping of one of my shows, and Grace LeMay is our media assistant here at Merrimack TV, but she used to work at Hudson Station. So you were very fun to talk to.
Thank you.
And wow, what a brain. And anybody can, not anybody, not everybody can do stuff like that, but my uncle was one like you. He could take anything and make stuff. But
My point was, if I may, one last thing. I think anybody can, but I started by citing all the reasons why people don't do creative things. I'm saying that more people can than actually do.
And with that, we'll say we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.